Hi folks, I'm the Bald Guy, and these are Bald Guy Basics. Today I'm going to do a little bit of a promo as well as a product review. I'm going to do a promo for gun safety. I am one of those people who has a foot in two sides of an issue. I believe in the Second Amendment. I believe that responsible people have a right to own guns for hunting, for recreation, and yes, even for self-defense. By the same token, I worked years ago in a gun range where I watched people shoot, and I'm going to tell you, some people don't need to have a gun because they're just unsafe. If you are a gun owner, even if you maybe just have dad's or granddad's old gun in the house and you are never going to shoot it, I want to make a promo for gun safety. I want to demonstrate how a simple product works, and then I want to actually review it and see if I can break it. So today, what I'm going to show you is what is known as the cable lock. For many years, and I guess it's still true of some manufacturers, but for many years when you bought a new gun, you either had a cable lock free in the box, it's not free of course, or you had maybe a trigger lock. The trigger locks have all but disappeared. I'm sure they're still out there somewhere, but I don't see them. But a cable lock is a very handy tool, not only for firearms, but for a lot of other, I use these sometimes for a toolbox or other things when I need something with an extended shank. And first thing I want to do today is show you how it is intended to work. So what I have here is just a pocket size 9mm. This will work on a shotgun. It will work on many rifles as long as you can open up the bottom of the action, like where the bottom of your magazine, so that you can run this cable out. But a cable lock has to have a key to open. And in fact, you can't then take the key out. To lock it back with the key still in the open position, you insert it and then lock it back, and it physically turns the shank to engage it. Now the thing can't be let out. Now, how it is intended to work for a firearm, with the firearm open, see I have the slide locked open. You simply run it down through the action. This one isn't as long as some. And lock it back. Take your key out. Now this gun, the action cannot close. You cannot get a magazine into it. You cannot get a bullet into the chamber. With some of these, you might, let me see if I can do this. You might choose to run it down the barrel as well. And that's just a matter of choice. Now why do this? This is especially applicable if you have children, or as I do, grandchildren. Yep, that'll go right down the barrel. And you see you can lock it the same way there. So I've run it down the barrel and out of the receiver. So, and you just lock it up and then put your keys where you do not want to lose them. This works the same way in a revolver. With a swing out cylinder, a double action revolver. You open the cylinder, either run it through the barrel or just run it through the frame, then the cylinder cannot shut. The gun cannot be fired. With a shotgun, whether it's an automatic shotgun or a pump action, same way, you've got the hole in the bottom of the receiver, the loading gate, and you just open the thing and run this through it. So now you cannot cycle the weapon. It cannot fire if it's not closed. Now, if you have an old single shot, either a single shot rifle, which were very popular back in the 50s and the 60s and even into the 70s, or a single shot rifle or shotgun, the shotgun I should say, the single shot bolt action or the single shot break action, that's the differentiation I was trying to make. The cable lock typically will not work for these because they just don't. You'll need a trigger lock. Trigger locks are readily available. If you have a bolt action single shot rifle, in most cases, now the first thing you do with every weapon is check to make sure it's empty. There's an old adage in the gun world that says empty guns kill more people, and That's assumptions. When I worked at that gun range, I had a man bring in I think it was a Browning. It was a beautiful high dollar 30-06. Brought it in a case, and he said, I need some gunsmithing done. Well, I didn't do that, but the boss did. But I opened the case and looked at it, and the first thing he did, he said, now this gun is unloaded. And I believed him. I waited until the boss was finished, walked over, handed him the gun. He said he'd like you to look at this, and the boss did what I should have done. He racked the action, and a 30-06 shell came flying out. He was not happy with me. So always check your weapon. But once you have checked a bolt action, most bolt actions with the bolt closed, and by the way, it's a bad thing to dry fire a weapon too many times. That means to pull the trigger with nothing in the chamber. The way to safely dry fire a bolt action, bring your bolt up, but not back. Just bring it up, but you don't rack it back. Then pull the trigger, and with your other hand, just ease that bolt down, and it will allow the firing pin to come forward gently. While you are holding that trigger in that position, now you open it, don't let off the trigger, and pull it back, and most weapons will allow the bolt to come out of them. Most bolt actions, I should say. So if you have an old bolt action rifle, just remove the bolt. Remove the bolt and place it somewhere else. Place it in a locked drawer, because the cable lock typically will not work for those. But what I wanted to do is consider, is this thing really safe? I've got several of these laying around. I've seen them where people didn't want them. I don't believe it, I'm locking a gun. Well, I understand there are different ways to store a weapon that is intended for self-defense. A locked gun that takes a long time to get out isn't very good for self-defense. I get that. What I'm concerned about is if this cable system is locked, like such, and we're going to imagine that the firearm is still in it, could a typical teenager with typical tools that are around the house get this thing out? That's what I want to look at today. So this is the review portion of my safety video. Now, I chose, like I said, I've got several of these. I hate to break anything. That's just the way I am, because I'm a cheapskate, I've told you. But this is the thinnest cable that I have, and these are, I don't know how you call this, but this is a segmented metal cable that is then covered by a protective rubber plastic type covering. So I just opened my toolbox, and I got a pair of dikes, a pair of diagonal cutters, and we'll start right up here in the middle. Now, I started to tell you my weight. I'm well north of 250 pounds. I'm not a muscle builder, weightlifter, that kind of guy, but I do work often enough that I've got some pretty good hand strength. So we're just going to try. Could a teenager cut this thing open? I couldn't make a dent in it. And the way these things are segmented, you have individual things that segment together that allows the cable to flex. I couldn't even dent this enough to stop the cable from flexing. So, typical pair of pliers, no dice. Let's see what else I've got down here. I've got a pair of end nippers here. They might have a little more pressure. I'm even going to go in the same spot. Uh-oh. Now, I've not done this before. I did not know this. So, that did not work. A pair of dikes, but a pair of end nippers with a guy. And I do office work, so you need to understand when I say I work on weekends, I work in the evenings, but just a typical non-weightlifting adult, and I am able to break this. So you need to understand that if you have a special, not an 8-year-old could not have done this, but a 14-year-old or a 15-year-old, maybe he doesn't have the hand strength I did. But, you can take another pair of pliers and like a pair of channel locks and multiply your force very easily. So I was able to do this, and as soon as I squeezed it, I felt it. With the proper tools, they can. just looking around my toolbox, guess where I'm going next? If you have an old pair of bolt cutters laying around, I know you can't see this, but I'll pick it up here. That was easy. And yes, a 12-year-old kid could do that very easy. Broke that right off. I wanted to give you one other segment. I just pulled out the first couple of tools that I thought would be maybe effective to cut my cable lock. But right after I ended my video, I was putting my tools up and I saw, well, I've got a pair of lineman pliers, another very common plier in your toolbox. And I was able to do that pretty good. Now, yeah, that takes a little bit of hand strength, but it's very doable. So if you're going to use a cable lock system, you need to be very aware not only of how you are storing your weapon, you need to be aware of what's around the house. What would allow a typical adolescent to get to it. Now, you know good and well that an adult, especially a criminal, this hardly even slows them down. So, especially when you have children around the house, let me just tell you, use safety devices. Now, there are other devices. The device that I don't have down here to show you, and the reason I don't have it because it is affixed, it is solidly attached to a place where I'm not going to show you, but I have a bread box sized gun safe with and it has two forms of opening, because if I ever needed a defensive weapon, I need to be able to get to it fast. So it has a digital combination on the top. You just take and you program in, there's 4 buttons, and you program in the combination that you want to do it, 1 2 2 4 or whatever. That allows me to access my weapons quickly, because I do not have children living here in the house. I don't mind keeping one a little closer, like in the bedroom, until the kids visit, and that's when I go to put things away. So be sure that you are being safe, especially when visitors are there. And I want to tell you one other thing. Because I have worked occasionally in this industry, do you know who has weapons stolen? People who talk about them. If you are always talking in your neighborhood, in your community, I got one of these and I got 2 of those, especially when you are around people that are involved in the drug community, guns are always a hot item out there, because there's an element who cannot legally buy them, so they want to get them some other way. And one of the things I tell people when I am working in the industry is item number 1 of gun safety: don't talk about it. It's one thing to come into a gun shop where you're in the room, so to speak, in that particular environment, and everybody talks about it. But it's another when you're talking to your neighbor, when your kids go to school. That's a great vulnerability. I'm going to tell you what I think is poorly considered. I started to say stupid, but we don't say stupid, do we? But it's stupid. If you put a bumper sticker on your car or in your window that says, you can have mine when you can pry it out of my cold dead hand, that might say to you that, man, I'm macho. But what it says to a criminal is, oh, there are guns here. If you have one that says this house protected by Smith & Wesson on 3 nights, you guess which 3 nights? All that says to them is there are guns in this place and you're vulnerable. So learn to let your business stay with you and not tell others. Cable locks are great to a point. Now, a trigger lock, I don't have one, but it's a 2-piece thing that comes apart, and then you put it right over the trigger and it goes together. It's a clamshell, and you turn and lock it. That is much harder to get off. No set of pliers is going to do it. I've never tested those to see how hard it would be to get off, because frankly, I don't own one. I just don't. So that is a consideration, especially for long-term storage. You're not going to rush to that item in case somebody's breaking in the front door. A trigger lock is a really good alternative or addition to these. The cable lock is the cheapest. It's probably the most convenient, but it doesn't fit any gun that you can't see through all the way through, because the cable has to go through somewhere. So the trigger lock will fit almost every gun out there that has a standard trigger well here. It clamps right over it, and that will be good for you. So just be safe, because there are no do-overs with firearms. In terms of when I worked at the shop, and someone would come in and say, you know, I feel the need to have one, but I have children, so I'm going to hide it from my children. They won't know I have it. And I would typically say, I'd lean over the counter and say, when you were 8 years old, what were your parents able to hide from you? And they would grin like, man, I found everything. I said, good. You need to understand, if you have kids in the house, you're not going to be able to hide this. So you have to lock it away. A lockable cabinet is another good thing. I actually got one here. Hold on. See this? I got this at Ollie's for next to nothing. It's a key safe like you would use at the office. And it's got like 130 keys in it, but it's this size. You go to a closet, you mount it in the closet, run screws into a 2x4, and it has a digital lock and a key lock. And you can find these online in various sizes, eBay, Amazon, $20, $30, $40. They make an excellent way to store one pretty safely. Nothing's 100%, but I wanted you to see just how secure these are. And like I said, I thought about, I often would do something first and then come back and make a video. Well, I wanted to do this one live. This isn't hard to break. Now, again, I use the cheapest cable lock I have. I have others that have a thicker cable that are going to be a little harder to break. But if you have one of these around the house, I don't think there's a cable out there that'll stand up to them. So be really careful how you choose to store them, and you need to test yourself once you choose a method. Is this workable or not? There are some other storage devices that are out there that work. They're not 100% secure, but their advantage is concealability. If you have books in your house, like books on a shelf that are visible, look up a book safe. Again, they are relatively inexpensive. They go on the shelf, so they conceal in plain sight. However, they usually have one of those little rotary locks, 3 or 4 digit locks, so you turn your numbers and you can get into it pretty quickly. The problem is, it's not a safe, it's a metal box. It's a metal box with a locking latch. So a hammer and a crowbar, maybe even a screwdriver, is going to be able to open those. But again, what you're doing, how many of your children go on the shelf and pick up a book that World Book Encyclopedia or a dictionary or whatever? They're not looking for those things, and if you don't tell them, then that's a much more secure place. So just some things for you to think of today. I've had a lot of fun over the years. Let me tell you one other thing about these things. If you can't see what this is, let me open it. This is a pair of foam rubber ear protectors. You can, our local shop sells these for 50 cents a piece, and they buy them for 10 cents a piece. If you want to buy them in bulk, you can. They're nothing. If you go shooting, don't shoot anything without hearing protection. I'm about to turn 61, and for the last 30 years I've had a ringing in my ears, and it's never going to go away. Don't be stupid. When I was, I don't know, in my 20s, go out in the backyard. Yeah, I don't need. I'm shooting a 22, or I'm just shooting a old single shotgun. And you get away with it today, you get away with it tomorrow, but over time, and I went out one day and shot a higher caliber pistol. Rang my ears, and it's never stopped. So be good to yourself, and you won't have to complain later. The joke around, if you hang around gun shops, the joke is the most common word in a gun shop is, huh? Because we can't hear. I'm the bald guy. Hope that you will be safe. Hope that you will understand how your safety equipment works, what it will do, what it won't do. And I hope to see you on the next video.